Everyone, it's Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my July wrap-up part 2, and I really enjoyed doing part 1, and it was a lot more fun to edit, so I may split my wrap-ups into 2 parts every month depending on how much I read. And I want to be talking about these 4 books plus 2 e-arcs or 2 NetGalleys that I got. I'm going to start with the NetGalleys. So the first book I want to talk about was my favorite of the month, and that was Heart of the Impaler by Alexander Delacroix. This is all about Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracula, and his father, Vlad Dracul, who was the Emperor of Wallachia in Romania. And it's about Transylvania, and yes, I really loved it. I love Dracula. I love the origin that he's not a vampire, but he did impale his enemies and leave them outside. Yeah, gruesome, I know, but when you think of impaling, you think of Dracula. Or Vlad Dracula. I don't know if the history was really accurate, but and then the romance between it's a love triangle. So it's got Vlad Dracula, Andre, his cousin, and Elonia, which is a peasant girl who came up into the court by her father. So, I need to find the synopsis. The story is about Elonia. She and her little sister enter into Vlad Dracul's court. Her father becomes one of the highest ranking members of his court, and that is because he betroths his oldest daughter to the heir to the throne. And she is mortified. Her betrothed does not care about her whatsoever, and Vlad Dracula, I'm just gonna call him Dracula, he's like adamant that he's going to take over the throne and be the Emperor of Wallachia, and that he's going to have Elonia as his bride. Now Elonia and her sisters go to their house, their new house, and Andre and Dracula are always coming to see her, and then one day they see the Ottoman Empire soldiers marching through. Biting my nails while reading the end because I didn't want anyone to die, but then when I got done reading it, somebody should have died. Somebody, to make it more interesting. So this book comes out in December, I think. I'm looking at now. Yes, December 7th this is published. So get your copies, go read it, it's great. The second e-arc that I read was The Secrets of Us by Lucinda Berry, and it's another favorite of the month. This is about 2 sisters. They are foster sisters, and one day the sister that's a lawyer, she gets a call saying that her brother-in-law is in the hospital in a coma with fluid in his lungs, and her sister has been arrested and sent to a psychiatric hospital because she thinks that somebody has taken over her husband and that he has killed someone. And so her sister is going on trying to figure out why did her demons from the past come back, and trying to keep their past and their juvenile records sealed. And it was just great. It is a multi-point of view. It's mainly from the lawyer's sister Crystal, but then the childhood flashbacks are from Nicole, who's in the psychiatric hospital. And I loved It was a perfect blend, and you would think it had a plot twist I did not see coming. It's a lot of death. It's a lot of gruesome gore. It's kind of paranormal, but not. Yeah, it's got hallucinations, visual hallucinations. It's got the rich white family that thinks they can do no wrong and that everybody owes them, and that if you're eating out of the palm of their hand, then you deserve to be loyal to them and do what they say. It's gross. And yeah, so it was an absolute page turner. I was like doing this on my phone, reading. I could not get enough. So this book came out in June, and you can go pick it up now. It's really great. I love the cover. It's like one of those fun houses at a carnival, and I highly recommend. I'm going to have difficulty choosing just one out of The Heart of the Impaler and The Secrets of Us as my favorite of the month. So, yes. I need to read more by Lucinda Berry because she was a great thriller. That was an awesome thriller. I fucking loved it. Okay, now we're getting into the 4-book pile. So, I'm going to be talking about Slingshot by Matthew Dunn. I am reading this series to be able to read the 4th book next month for the Buzzword Challenge with the word dark in the title. So this is book 3 in the Spice Catcher series. This is Slingshot, and this one wasn't my favorite, but it was still good. So if I had to rank the 3 that I've read so far, it'll be 2, 3, 1. And so we're following this group of world leaders, or Russian and U.S. leaders. They start this meeting talking about this way to get China at war with the U.S. and the world, basically. Like, start a World War III with China. So they talk about if all of these pieces of paper come together, then that will start the war with China, and it is called Slingshot. And so we get introduced to this assassin named Kronos, which made my Greek mythology heart happy. And yeah, that's a character. Okay, so I'm doing my top 10 Tuesday, and Kronos is a character that I would want to learn more about. So when Will Cochran comes into play, he is trying to rescue or escort this Russian defector in Poland, and the Poland Secret Service Russian assassins, and Will Cochran and his team are trying to get this one guy off this boat. They fail, and so Will Cochran believes that he is starting to fail his task, and he becomes even more moody and like down. And so Kronos finds out, or no, one of the this book was confusing. One of the reasons why I didn't like it as much is because there's so many characters that are one-dimensional. I kept getting some characters confused. Like I just said, Kronos tried to kill his sister, but that was completely different. There was a completely different guy named Simon, and Simon doesn't come in until the middle as a bad guy, and it's just, the characters weren't fleshed out. That's why I didn't like this one. I love the settings. It took place in England, Ukraine, Poland, Scotland, I think, yeah, Russia, and he didn't have a love interest this time, which was great, but he did throw there was a hint of a love interest spark between a character that was in love with the Russian defector and that Russian defector's child. So, not great. There were some character deaths that made me cry. And his disintegrated relationship with his sister was just awful. Yeah, so I'm ready to read the fourth one. I keep saying that if I didn't like the third one, I wasn't going to continue, but the writing has gotten so much better. Will Cochran, he's not as arrogant. He was not arrogant in this one whatsoever. He just seemed like a kicked puppy. And so I'm ready to read the fourth one next month. It may be the first one I pick up. No, that's a lie. Darker Shade of Magic is going to be what I pick up. But anyways, I'm going to be reading the fourth one next month. And then I may continue with the series, because I'm really liking it now. I'm not really liking it. I'm enjoying it to an extent. I'm interested in the story and see where it goes. I'm interested in the other aspects of where he goes, his other missions, and if he eventually stops or dies. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. So the next book I read for a readathon, weekathon challenge that I took part in spontaneously. And I've been looking at this book. I got it in a Goodreads giveaway when it was an ARC from 2017. And it is a King Lear retelling. I have never read any Shakespeare in my life whatsoever. So that is Dunbar by Edward St. Aubyn. I ended up giving this a 3. The beginning was a little confusing because you couldn't understand what he was talking about. He kept saying that, oh, they stole my company from me and they killed everything, and it was just a grumpy old man in not an insane asylum, but a psychiatric asylum in England. And so we follow Henry Dunbar, who was the founder of this giant telecom company. He owned so many TV stations around the world, and his 2 daughters have put him into a retirement home and are planning to take the company private so they can make more money, and he has been left with nothing. All he has is a secret credit card and a roommate that does impressions. So he eventually escapes with said friend and uses his credit card to buy a whole round of beers. His 2 bitch daughters find out, and they go on a journey to hunt him down and put him away forever and keep him from this board meeting to make the company private and him not have anything whatsoever to say. His 3rd daughter, his favorite daughter from the love of his life, actually comes to his rescue, and she doesn't want anything to do with the company. She doesn't want no money, anything. And she comes to his rescue, and it's just, yeah, it's got murder in it. It's gruesome. It's very cutthroat and blackmailing, backstabbing, very erotic. So yeah, it was told in multiple perspectives. Dunbar's chapters were very boring because he kept talking in like old world language. The daughters, the 2 daughters, the 2 bitch sisters as I call them, their chapters were great. They were my favorite because they had the most action, the most attitude and spunk and just character. Had the most life. And Dunbar was like, oh, no. He was talking to nobody. The bitch sisters were talking to people. They were getting shit done. And Dunbar, he was just walking in the snow and whining and complaining the whole entire time. This is my second Shakespeare retelling that I've read, which is kind of bad because, like I said, I have never read a Shakespeare. So I'm going to try to remedy that next year, because I'm not going to try to remedy that this year because I have too many books on my fucking TBR. And yes, do I recommend? If you like Shakespeare or King Lear. I have a least favorite book for the month of July, and it was one that I was so excited to read, and that is The Last Days of New Paris by China Miéville. This is like an alternate history where it's the 1950s. It's a dual timeline. It takes part in the 1950s, and the Nazis are still taking over, occupying France. And the second perspective is 1930 something, or 1940, and the war is just ramping up. And yeah, so New Paris, there's 3 parties fighting: the Nazis, the Resistance, and art. Okay. I'm going to try to talk about this book the best I can. And if it confuses you, don't worry. This book was confusing as hell. Okay. So, I want to show you the cover. You see the Eiffel Tower? Do you see right here? Look what's missing. The bottom of the Eiffel Tower is gone. The top of the Eiffel Tower, it's suspended in air because it's alive. Apparently somebody dropped this bomb called the S-bomb, and all of the artwork and landmarks came to life, called motifs. And the Nazis are fighting the Resistance and the motifs. The motifs are going after anybody and the Nazis. And the Resistance is fighting the motifs and the Nazis. And so we follow this guy named Thibaut. And he walks a new hallucinogenic Paris where Nazi and the Resistance are trapped in an unending conflict, and the streets are stopped by living images and text and by the forces of hell. To escape the city, he must join forces with Sam, an American photographer, intent on recording the ruins and making common cause with a powerful, enigmatic figure of chance and rebellion, the Exquisite Corpse. And then in the second timeline, 1941, in the chaos of wartime Marseille, American engineer and occult disciple Jack Parsons stumbled upon a clandestine anti-Nazi group, including surrealist theory Andre Breton and the strange games of the descendant diplomats, exiled revolutionaries, and avant-garde artists. Parson finds and channels hope, but what he unwittingly unleashes is the power of dreams and nightmares, changing the war and the world forever. So that guy created the motifs. He built something that brought all of these artwork and images and landmarks to life. And yeah, the big baddie at the end, of course, who is the big baddie of World War II, he becomes, and it's funny because Hitler wanted to be an artist, and if he hadn't gotten rejected, I don't think he would have turned out as bad as he did. But yeah, it brings up his art past as the bad. And yeah, that was kind of my the only part I liked about this book was the big reveal of the baddie. And yeah, this was confusing. China Michael, his books are confusing. The other book that I've read by him is The City in the City, where there's a city in a city, and you have to walk a certain way. You can't look a certain place. Like, if you're standing right here in this one city, there's a line right here, and here's the other city. You can't walk through that city to get to the other side. You can't look at anybody that lives in the other city if you're living in this one city, and you got to have a passport to get into the city from the other city. And it's just great. Thinking about it now, I really liked it, but back then when I read it, I was just like, what? This is confusing. But it was good. But this one probably grow on me if I keep thinking about it, but right now it was confusing. I ended up giving it a 2. So, and the last book for my July wrap-up is Spies Golden Gate by James Ponti. This is the sequel to City Spies. And this is about a group of kids who are in MI6. They're kid spies. And they're smart. One's good with puzzles. One's good with, figuring out things and finding things in pictures. And, yeah, it's just, I love this little series. I read this out loud to my kids. And this is a middle grade mystery. Highly recommend. Cannot wait for the third one. This one has to be the best one out of the 2 so far because it was more action-packed. There's a lot more betrayal. There was a sexist comment at the very beginning, but it was quickly remedied. And I think that the author could have done without that sexist comment in a middle grade. I can't stand seeing sexist comments in a middle grade. I just can't. But it was answered. I just don't think that sexist comment was necessary. Even though there was a ship full of girls and the bad guy, he said it. I read that part and my daughter was like, what? Excuse me? So, my oldest, my 12-year-old. But anyways, there's a lot more betrayal. It's more like journey and quest and a lot more surprise. The end had me crying. I was bawling like a fucking baby. And Mother, I love him so much, and I love his motherisms. He is just the best father figure to these kids. And Rio had me fucking hungry the entire time while reading this. He's talking about Chinese food, and yeah. So I can't go into much detail about this book because it's going to spoil, but the kids, their names are Sydney, Rio, Paris, Brooklyn, and that's their new names for where Mother found them and recruited them for MI6. There is more betrayal to the kids, meaning that once a kid gets older, they're treated more like an adult and talked to like an adult and not as trusted anymore as when they were kids. That comes from, you get a taste of that from the woman that's in Parliament that's presiding over the hearing, where she grills Sydney because she's the oldest, and like, oh, did you do this? And but did you do that? But you just said this, and trying to make her mess up and treating her like an adult, talking at her like an adult. And yeah, so it gives my kids a little taste of that, and it introduces them to like how adults really talk to children in the real world. And so yes, I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5. Highly enjoyed it. The end, that was, I would have given it a 10 out of 10 if that was possible. But so that is it for my July wrap up part 2. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on my next video.